maximize this, and I will zoom it. So I want to do this. Actually, I don't want to do that, because I think that only works on the outside one. Okay, so everything's really big now. All right, so if you come up on the workbench here, is this where you guys came up? Looks like most of you did. What you want is to do File, New Model, if you haven't started a model already. Now, if you have started a model, you can do File, Open Model, and just open the model that you've already started. So in this, there's basically, you can double click. When you first come up, it gives you a default MyDB. And you don't really want to leave that. If you just click on that, double click it, I guess, it will open up some properties down here. One of the things that you want to do is rename it. So I'm going to rename it, I'm going to call it Python Club, and I'm going to call mine B because I think I made one earlier, and I don't want to overwrite it. So I'm going to, you don't have to do the B. You could just call it Python Club, whatever you want to call it. Notice it names it up here. All right, so once it's named, you could actually add tables here, and you can do it all just in the designer, setup. But I think it's easier if you add a diagram. So I'm going to double click that, and it gives me this grid, right? If you're behind, I'll help you catch up on this. So this grid is basically a designer, kind of like Lucidchart or the one in SQL Server. This one, the reason we're doing it instead of Lucidchart is that you can design in here without actually creating the database. Whereas in SQL Server, when you design, you create the database. So there are different icons here. If you hover, it tells you. So we're going to place a new table. And let's just talk real quickly. So I'm going to click on that and then just click in here. If you double click that, it will bring up the properties and you can give the table a name. I'm going to say members. That's one of the things that you probably, I'll just call it member. One of the things that you'll have in your Python club, right? And then we'll talk about some of the other objects. I'm going to make one table. We'll just walk you through that process. And then we'll maybe make another just to show a connection, how to connect them. And then we'll just talk about what some of the objects would be, some of the table objects or entities. If I click down here, so I've double clicked it. I've named this member. Down here, I can do the columns. So if I click down here and click here, it gives me a default ID name for the primary key and a default thing. Now, if you don't want this, if you want it to be member ID, you can just type over it, right? You don't have to leave it as ID number. Does that make sense? You can just type over it. If you wanted this to be member ID as a field, that's perfectly fine. Now you have the data type here, just like in SQL Server, you have to choose data types, and they're similar. So int is for a good thing for primary keys. PK here is a primary key. So when you click on that, the first thing it does is it clicks not null. You can't have a null in the primary key. That's what the NN is. And then you can click PK for primary key. Notice it also checks it down here. These are exactly the same things as these. Does that make sense? So primary key PK, not null NN. B is for binary. UN is for unsigned. ZF is for zero. If instead of putting nulls in an empty cell, you can put zeros in it if you want, if it's a numeric field. One of the things we may want to check is AI, which is auto-incremented. Okay. And you don't want to do generated. Generated produces like a UID. You guys know it looks like those long strings of letters that you use for license keys on software. So we don't want it generated. We want it auto incremented. Okay, so that's the first one. Let's just do, what would be some of the columns in member? These are the club members, right? The Python. Yeah, so we want their name. And you might want, I usually consider it a good idea to do like last name. Okay, and it gives you varchar 45. That actually is okay. If you want, you can add more. Again, just like in SQL Server, it can go up to 255. Varchar here is the same as in varchar in SQL Server because it is Unicode by default. And SQL Server has this thing where they're trying to stay backwards compatible. That's why they have ASCII only varchar, and then in varchar is Unicode, but this is Unicode by default. So you don't have to worry about any difference. If you want it to be required, you can do not null. And if you want more characters, you can do more characters. I'm going to do first name. Why is it not writing? All right, there we go. And again, varchar 45. I might leave that null. Notice the different icons here. Key, right, is a little key. Required is a blue diamond. Not required is a clear diamond. Does that make sense? So it gives you a little bit of an icon. It's a kind of a nicer environment than the SQL Server one. I'm going to do their email. So I'll do email. And you could do member email if you want. I'm going to make this a little longer. Some emails are kind of long. So I'll make that 100. And I'll make it not null. Let's do like date added. And instead of varchar here, we want to choose either like date time or date down here. If it has parentheses, you might have to do some arguments. I'm just going to make it date. And I'm going to make it not null. Okay. And I'm going to let that be my member table. One of the things you guys will need to decide is what the attributes are in here, whether you need more, things like that. Does that make sense? That's a member one. The process there, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. What?
What is no name means?
The NN?
Yeah.
Means not null. You can't leave it null. It's required.
Okay.
So if you click not null, then it's required. Or no, this means it can have nulls. That's weird. Do we have a... No, it means it's null. It means it can't have nulls. Because if we go up here, then this is not null means it cannot have a null. So you check it if it's required. I just had a big cup of coffee, but I could sure use another. All right, yeah, so if it's required, you put that in there. Right? If you don't put that in there, and again, this is just like in the other database, the design is the same principle. The software is different. But the design of the structure of the database is exactly the same process as the design of the.
Can you explain some of these other types like binary, unique, zero fill?
So binary is like if you were going to store an image in there.
Hmm.
So it's not text. It's 0 and 1. It's bytes.
Would it still have a primary or foreign key?
No, this is this is just an image file or any kind of non-text, non-character file. So you would probably still have a primary key. You'd have other text keys that identify it, like the name of the image, and the binary would be just the image itself, or it could be a song. You could put a MP3 file or something there. I mean, basically binaries for any kind of non-character kind of text.
So this you could attach like an avatar or something.
You could, yeah.
What about the other three? They're unique, zero fill.
So unique means that you could make it so that it cannot be repeated. So let's make email unique. That means that I just want to go here. I didn't want member column. I want that one gone. Delete. I want email to be unique. I got to get it on the right column. Why is it not allowing? What? There. No, it's not letting me check that. Lets me check it down here. Why is it not letting me check it there? Anyway.
You're checking unassigned.
Oh, unsigned, and it's not I want unique. I see. Good guy. I was looking at EN. So unique means that it can never repeat. It's like a primary key. It means that the email has to be unique every time you enter it. That's actually a good thing to have for some kinds of fields, but you have to be sure that it will be. And if it isn't unique, if you accidentally enter the same email twice, it will throw an error. The unsigned, if it's an integer type or a numeric type, it means that they're all positive numbers and there's no negative number. That makes a difference on actually how big so one byte. If you're doing 1 byte, the maximum size, if it's signed, is 254 because you have to reserve 1 bit for the sign. If it's unsigned, the maximum amount is 255 for 1 byte. Does that make sense? It makes a difference in storage slightly because you have to reserve a bit to say whether it's negative or positive. Zero fill, if it's a numeric type, when you don't enter a number, it gives you a null, right? Nulls are not accounted for in any kind of math. If you do a math, it just ignores the null fields. So if you don't want that, you can say put a 0 wherever it's null. That is something to think about, though, because a 0 and a null are different things. A null doesn't affect your average, a 0 would lower your average rate. So. And then what other ones? Generated, as I said, generates an IUD. Basically a string of hex numbers. So if you want, I've used them in databases for if you look at the community assist, there's one for verification number for your donation. They're a bit long for that. There might be a way to shrink it. I don't know. Does that make sense of this? I do not know what virtual. Stored means it's written to the disk. Virtual must be that it's only in memory. All right, so we got this. Let's add another table. What do you think? What would be some of the things that would be in this Python club? It's basically you're managing a club. So you could do meeting. And again, if you double click this, and I could change this to meeting. And then when I click down here, again, it gives me ID meeting. If I don't like that, I can do meeting ID. I often leave them just as is. It doesn't matter, but it's whatever name you want. And again, I would make it a primary key, and I would auto increment it, although you don't have to. Just like the other one, we're only going to enter 5 or 6 records in each thing, so it's not a big deal whether you auto increment it or not, but you can auto increment it. I'm not going to go through all the all the fields here, but what would be a couple more for meeting? So you would want the date, and I'd probably do it as like meeting date. And again, you'd probably want, I would suggest date unless you need the time as well. Now, if you want the time, there's a couple of ways you could do it. You could do date time, or let's do the meeting time. You can do it as 2 fields. Because there is a time data type as well. So let's go down to time. Oh, where is it? Is it up at the top? Yeah. Now, time is a function, and you have to put inside of this how much precision you want. So I'm going to put 6. I think it'll be happy with that. And then I'm going to make these not null, because you would want those for sure. The precision in time, it just sort of dropped that. But I think it won't work if you don't do it, is how many. So if I put 6, that means it'll be these hour, minutes, and seconds. If I put in 8, it would be hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. That makes sense. And typically, you have to enter time in military time. All right, so we have that. And I'm going to show you, there would be other columns there, right? So I am going to just real quickly add one more table just to show you how to do relationships. But I would build all of the entities before I do the relationships. And this is unlike SQL Server in that you do not have to put the foreign keys in, because it will add them when you add the relationship. And I'll show you that in a moment. I'm going to say I'm going to call this one meeting attendance. And what I want to do in this is basically I'm just going to do 2 foreign keys. So I will do member ID, and it's an int, and I will do meeting ID. This is again sort of the idea that many to many, one member can attend many meetings. One meeting will have many members, so we need a linking table. So this is the linking table. I'm also going to make this part of the primary key. Actually, this one might be better to do. Actually, let me. I'll show you how to do it by dragging. I'm actually going to delete these. You can do them. You can put them in and you can do them. I will show that in a moment too. I'm going to delete. And the reason I'm going to delete it is I'm going to show you. If I click here, well, actually, first what I want to do, I'm going to drop down this just because I can't get to them. I'm going to use the, this is one case where I would use the solid one. I will click on here, and then I'll click on here. And notice it gives you a member ID int thing. And then if I click on the solid one again, solid is not what you want normally, but in this case it would work. Click on the foreign key, click on the primary key. I did that wrong. Let me delete that. I'm going to click on it, click on the foreign key, click on the primary key. There we go. And if I double click this, you'll see that both of those are keys already. It made them foreign keys and primary keys. That's what the solid line does. The reason you don't want to use it most of the time is it always makes the foreign key a part of the primary key. You don't want that most of the time. So let's do like, I'm going to add meeting minutes. So I'm going to do a new table. And I'll just call this meeting minutes. And what I'm going to do is this will just be, I want a, I'll do meeting minutes ID. I'm just going to leave it. All right. And then I'm going to close this because I can't get to the icons otherwise. I'm going to use a dashed one. I'm going to click on this and then click on this. And it makes a foreign key here. And you can rename it if you want. So if you want it to be the same as the meeting ID, you can come down here and just change it to meeting ID. But it is a foreign key. And if you look down here under foreign keys, you can see that it has been made a foreign key. It's the meeting ID is the, and it references meeting ID. And you could set them up that way too. But does that make sense? The easiest way is just to drag. The only thing I want to say is that 90% of the time you want the dashed line, not the solid. When you drag.
I have a question.
Sure.
When you do many-to-many ones, do you have to pop up that say like, for example, let's say like cloud card,
Thank you.
like right now, I have to make that, right? And then this way.
You know, so if you have,
Yeah, that's the key then.
This is the reverse ID of the first one. I just use the bottom one.
yeah. So,
No, I did all that.
maybe that's an issue, not. Well, I don't know. Let's see. I'll take a look at it. If they look correct.
Yeah, well, however you use both of them, you look a lot more,
Okay. So there is a many-to-many thing there. I'm not sure you were using that one, and it said it, but it actually seems to have resolved into one-to-many mostly.
Oh, you know, it's one to many.
Yeah, so it turned into one-to-many. I'm not sure.
Yeah, actually, that's what it is. Okay,
So does that give you enough to be started? So what you want to do, look at the Python Club thing and think about what you need. So we've got part of it. We've got the member, we got meeting attendance, we got meeting minutes. There were other things. You guys remember what some of those were? And, you know, that you would need in this database? You have speakers and events, right? And then you have, let me erase a little here. Speakers and events. What else? So we have
And then I have resources.
yeah, resources, speakers, events. And by resources, what I mean are people posting tutorials and things like that. So they're typically like a web page or a book or something that would be useful. Could be a video, something like that. Speakers, events, resources, anything else? One of the things about members is you need to differentiate who are officers, and there's different ways to do that. You do not have to set up the security, but you do, for the security I described, you would need to know who is an officer and who is not. Give it a shot. Make sure that all of these, I didn't fill these out with all the attributes that they might need. I'm going to give you basically today to do this, if you can. If you're not done, I mean, it'll be all right. But what I would really love is to be able to look at them tomorrow and get feedback back to you, and you can revise them a little and then start entering data. A couple of other things I should show you real quickly that I think I should, but I will show you again. When you're done with this, you can save this. So you can save the model as, and you can take it wherever you want. This is documents, so that should be fine. And I'm going to give it a name, Python Club B, and it'll give it an MWD or MWB extension. So it's actually this file, unlike anything in SQL Server. So let's go to Documents. This file is movable. You can trade it, you can give it to other people, and as long as they have Workbench, they can load the model. All right, so I've saved this. Let me close this diagram, and I'm going to close the model. All right, so if I come in and I say File, Open Model, and I find Python Club, and I do Open, it will all be right back where it was. So the model saves this. And when you're done, but don't do it until we've talked about it, we can do a forward engineer and take the model and create the database out of it. Reverse engineer is where you have an existing database and you want to create a model. Forward engineer is where you take your model and you create your database. And that's what I hope we can do on Wednesday to get you ready for that. And also, as I said, I'm going to post on Canvas what next week's schedule looks like. Basically, we've only got Wednesday next week because Monday's a holiday. It's Veterans Day. It's actually not Veterans Day proper, but they're doing it on Monday this week. And Wednesday is, I will probably be at jury duty. So I will post what we hope to get done in that one day that we will do after class. And again, don't worry about the due dates. I was over optimistic on the due dates, but we have plenty of time to finish things up. So I know it's a little disconcerting that you're turning things in late, but I've assigned them, getting them to you late. So don't worry about the dates. Questions? You guys okay? Yeah.
So somewhere we can find all of the entities that would be required for this?
Well, it's actually just a matter of thinking it through. I mean, if you think about it, because it varies depending on how you interpret the rules and things. One of the things is that there isn't an absolute right answer to it. But I mean, some of them are obvious. One of the things you do, let's bring it up real quick. If you look at the Canvas description, so I'm going to just do, so let's look at this one. So let's go to, well, actually modules would be better. So this one is down here with the Python Club PDF. We'll just look at it again real quickly. All right, so it's a club. One of the things that when you're looking at this, if you go through and look at the nouns tend to interpret into things. So, you know, they want to build a website for the club that lists all their activities and provides a central place. So down here where it does the scope, it should track meeting times and places, right? So we need meeting times. You might need something like a location entity to keep track of locations, so you don't have to enter them over and over again. Summaries of the meetings. So that's my meeting minutes. You can call it whatever you want that have already happened. A list of all the speakers and presentations presented by the club, as well as upcoming meetups and events around the town. So there should be something like an entity to track events. Right? And you might have a list of type of events, you know, lookup table for just the type of events. But there's a lot of opening here. You know, we need to keep track of also the resources and tutorials posted by members and general announcements, which could come under events. You know, or you could have a separate one. Yeah.
When you say lookup table, do you mean like a table that's not necessarily connected through a relationship?
It is actually connected through relationships. A lookup table is something like a list of all the states, right? So when you have an address thing, there would be a foreign key that links to the state lookup table. It's a way of keeping things consistent. It's a lookup table because it doesn't have any function other than to provide a list of things to look up. Again, the business rules don't matter a whole lot, except so only members can post announcements. So you might have like a member ID in the announcement. Don't worry about the security of that. I'll show that to you eventually. But only club officers can post the meeting times, which means that you need to have know who's an officer. There's different ways you can do that. I'd be curious to see how you do it, and then we can talk about it. We'll talk about it again. And then club member, so mostly only members can post, right? Anyone can look at stuff, but only members can post. And only officers can do the meeting stuff. Is there any, and ignore, you can ignore these. Yeah.
You want to hear what I did?
Yeah.
I did business rules for offices. So I did, under that, I did like posting high, meeting summaries, and I did notice meetups.
Okay, should I? I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, I already submitted you.
Okay. Also, I would, although you can do the MWB file if you want, I still prefer like, can you in here do it as, so save model as, I'm just curious. I think you can save it as a PD. No, it just wants models. You can take a picture of it, or you can send me the model file. Model file is a bit of a pain, but because I have to download it, I have to open up MySQL to look at it. I don't have MySQL in my office, so I may have to add that. So give it a shot. As I said, the first what we're aiming for is the first DRD, right? The draft, and you can't do that wrong, basically, because then we'll go through it and we'll fix it, modify it. And I'm going to give you the rest of today to do that, and then you don't have it on there. So, let's look at what? Okay. Let's look at so, yeah. Alright, so you need to add a group. It's good to Alright, so let's go to C. So we need yeah, what we need yeah, there's like data. Well, right, but we need it, so where did you do it? But they also
convenient then. Well, that's what it calls meetings. Meeting.
So you want to do it then, just do a new
Meeting their internal meetings. Well, and it could be also yeah. They could advertise that as an event. And they could also advertise it.
well,
But I don't know how to like label it to make it make sense.
now it should start. So do file.
They might not be.
What are you writing? Sorry. So let's do. Well, so I think what you want to download is. Should be a thing that says MongoDB. So just download it. These are the install. I think I would do.
was talking about events as well. There's gonna be an event coming. It's a meeting. Called meeting. That would probably give me. What was presentation? So maybe in the meeting. Someone want to do a search or a presentation? So how do we tell the difference between this kind of club meetups and then other meetups? Other meeting.
Yeah, but you just have to file it. So, so I would just go.
It's going alright. I'm just not really sure if I did this part right. It's got like a weird.
I had to like look up this.
Yeah, for this one though, I was thinking it actually is 1-to-1 because I mean it depends on how you do it because you could have one member being more than one speaker, but I was thinking like every member would just be one speaker, the speaker is one member, and one meeting. This is per meeting. One meeting would have many speakers.
I didn't agree with that. I was thinking
But
yeah,
it's a good idea too.
and I was thinking.
That would still work for this though, right? 'Cause even in this case, you could still, if you had per meeting, even if it was an outside speaker.
Yeah, I thought the meetings for events were separate. And I thought the events
It's still working. We'll do that.
They are.
Yeah, and I thought the events were separate speakers.
You might be right, actually.
I thought meetings was just like the call to order. The commissioners are here business. Announcements.
You're right. This meeting.
Honestly, it probably works.
Oh, you got. No, those
You
things.
said. Well, the meetings and the meetups, I guess that would be like the events.
You need it bigger or can you?
You're right, the meetups. So maybe.
I don't know what I can do. Is there a zoom on here? Is that bigger enough or more? Yeah.
I'm gonna change it and just have like, because you're right that the speakers are for the meetups. So I'm gonna make, I might still have, that's not even attached to anything.
I'm thinking of them as club meetings. This is it's a little bit ambiguous, because then you have events which are different, I think. Now, it is possible that there might be a way to combine, but in my mind, there's like
So meetings can be like
internal club meetings, and then events are things that they do with the public.
an event that you can use. I don't know, their own meeting.
They could, but it wouldn't be like an internal club meeting, it would be like open to the public. I'm thinking, meetups are usually held like in a bar.
So we're just, we meet up, we don't have to have like.
The meetup, meetup, I think would be just another.
An event. So for events, you meet up with a meetup idea versus an event.
I don't think so, because an event, I would just say that an event could be a meetup, it could also be a lecture. I don't think you necessarily.
You, or you don't need to do it. Okay.
You do for the event, but not necessarily for the.
How do you do meetup?
So down here. Like and you might also want something that describes the event. So, because those are what you call them.
I'm gonna wait for setting.
It does it automatically, just adds a call, it's sort of a pain. Then you can say it's a lecture.
Would you use that for table culture?
You don't have to, I mean, it is possible you could have like a little table of event types, but you don't have to, you could just do a description. I don't think
It's
so yeah.
I already have like
Resources. Because I'm thinking of those as just things that they post like,
Yeah.
here's a really great tutorial, just website, this is a good thing to look at. I think you're connected to
The member would post these.
the member would post it.
So I'm really good.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would link resource to event either. I would link that to member or officer. Probably members can post it. Someone else is used to do
If a resource is to be a book, could this be a book ID? How do you know?
I would just do it as a resource, ID, and then I would add something in the resources and say,
Yeah.
like, is it a book or is it a-
So it could be like a tutorial that you did.
Right.
So for the resource, you have to be
Yeah.
and then where, and then you don't need to put that tutorial link anywhere on here.
So you might want a URL. In the resource, just a field, the text field. And the reason that, even if it's a book, you could probably link to it.
Just be a URL.
Whatever you want. In the links, whatever. Probably, well, actually, no, we need a link, because one member can listen.
You have to see the relationship.
I'm
Like
not
just,
sure if it's,
Yeah, yeah, that's all.
okay.
So I'm thinking,
I'm thinking some of these a little different. I think I'm gonna do one meetup can have
so you've got.
many guests and many members. So the members, the people in the group, guests would be like they want to bring their dad, mom, whatever. And then I'm gonna have speakers, like one meetup and many speakers. But I think I need to get a linking table for meetup and member. Because technically, one meetup can have many members and one member can. Oh, no, but this is per meetup. Never mind. So this will be, I don't know.
So is it a book, is it a
Because
tutorial, is it a
one member,
Video, and then
This
most
should
of these
just be
will have
awesome.
web links, so even a book you can link to on Amazon.
So I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
So resource tape, it has to be
Yeah, well, it could just be both.
and
Bar charts is so when you're saying.
so every meetup can have many members.
Word
And
is gonna say,
stuff like that. It can just be like per meetup.
That makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
How'd you do yours?
So far,
So under,
Go ahead.
so under, I just have, or I just add. And then they have to go to the
Your business where you might also say office, like office. name or something.
that location of that type or just location.
title or something.
Title would be fine.
I have it controlled in, I eventually do have like. either
Think
meetup
about what
or,
a club would need, basically, it's kind of manage all the information for student club.
Also.
Never been in. There are, school requirements. So you have to have a certain basically, you have to have a president, vice president, secretary, treasurer.
So that way,
You just gotta look up
Not
the
that it's bad.
information, whether it's a meeting, event, whatever.
yeah, exactly. Just all it is just a name and address. So we can show.
Did you get it?
Yeah.
And I just looked at the template for what everything and are and sources that I got put in there, but I might scale it back a bit so I can.
If you have a lookup table, then you actually have to put the actual like addresses or whatever.
So I have address as non checked or unchecked, so I don't actually have to put anything in address. So if I wanted to, I could.
I was just thinking like to put,
But it still has a posting of it.
I thought the lookup table was like,
It's
You
like
put the 50 states or whatever, and you select one of those.
it's like you remember the genre entity?
Whatever.
Yeah, it's like that. So it's just like it would be genre ID and spectrum. So one, three jazz minutes, it's just one behind something, 2 argument, 3, whatever. That's how I'm thinking of it. It kind of makes sense. Hopefully that works.
No, it kind of makes sense.
Not to do with resource stuff,
Yeah.
You also track all the resources and make sure you put somebody in there.
Yeah.
I don't know, so you can consider
Wait, I have for some meeting topic and meeting description.
Yeah, let's you know, whoever gets taken care of,
I have meeting topic and meeting description. And I made a meeting description on them. Maybe you want to meeting
there may be.
The meeting is when you have
I don't know, maybe it's either the office. Yeah. There. Oh, wait, we need,
one number from the
I feel like adding extra stuff, like here,
Oh, yeah.
like the meetup should have the meetup ID. It's also adding the member ID. It was done before I added this relationship. Just to like that. So like it's still adding that number ID, you know, why? Shouldn't it just have to be the Is yours doing it too?
I don't know, you tried deleting it?
Yeah, it did. You have to,
One member can have many meetings.
it's still there. But it's also tricky. I wonder if I uncheck that. Might go away.
So if you delete the relationship, and then you refresh on it and see what you right click on speaker.
It's going now. I'm gonna try adding new people.
Yeah, try, yeah.
So I just want to have meetup speaker.
No.
I got the same problem with other teams. Because it's also like, see here, remember it's adding speakers, it's got all these keys that I'm not adding. Like,
Are you sure you have the relationship the right way around? Because that could be the problem. 'Cause I had that issue actually with he's come to think of it, and then it was because I had the relationship wrong.
because I mean, this only has, you know, I mean, you have one member has many meeting attendances, but one meetup can have many members. But I don't see how speakers is attached. Speakers is down here. It is attached, I mean, they're all attached together, but like speakers is not attached directly.
Yeah, that's I don't know.
I really should just add them on laptop.
The meeting attendance is visible to members. The meeting needs to be now to meeting attendance. How one meeting can have many attendance.
Because I tried to.
And also have that. Would that be one to one? No. Connected to mine. It's the notes from the meeting. The one meeting. No, we have one meeting.
Speaker stay silent.
This is,
There's only one meeting in the evening.
No, then
It's one meeting.
anyone inside will update the law.
One of them.
Are you using this one or this one?
Using the dot or the dash exclusively. Yes.
I was using this one. I wonder if that's causing my problem. Because I just did this one and it worked.
Yeah, I would stick, he mentioned that, 9 dash one.
Yeah, I think that's what was going on.
Yeah, because maybe that's how like links any primary keys from other tables that are linked to that table. Yeah, I know, like linking a table, like what maybe the solid line means that it's like linking any primary keys from tables related to the table that you are trying to link. So say you're linking this table to this table, if maybe the solid line means that like it picks up this primary key and then picks up this primary key and then shuts it down or something.
Yeah, like maybe. That would be really strange. Yeah, maybe that's what's going on. But basically doing what we don't want.
Yeah, but if you do the dash, it's like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
Just gonna be doing all that.
I mean, because if you just do the meeting, yeah,
Reset this.
I guess.
and if you're doing a schedule of upcoming meetings, you can do a query.
I think
These dates greater than. So the dotted line is a lot more stakeholders and all this, going to relationship. And then the solid line means it's like identifying, which breathing, environments. So if this key is part of the key of the child variable, it's called identifying the address. You don't want to do that over here because you find out that suddenly the primary key access of the yields. Because it will be added to the primary key. The dotted line is what you want for everything except it's a subtle point that most diagrams ignore, but for some reason. They should, because if they're not, if you look at that, it's kind of key. So that is that's a linking.
Oh, yeah, because that.
So that one can be. So you want to put orange being.
So when we use that's
Yeah. Yeah. Right. No, you don't want to put it. Generally, you only want to put those in. You don't need them. Besides that, a meeting will be a lot of members there. Yeah. The thing is, when you start entering the lid, you use the solid lines. It will, yes, it will basically make it.
What about one slide?
Maybe it's the member. Yeah.
One meeting in.
So I think it would connect to a member if you want to know who the member is. Member is going to be the main table that has the most. Yeah.
Especially if you have a lot of,
So, and you're basically tracking your work. Yeah. I hope I'm not still videoing. I got somebody who told me the other day, your video has a lot of dark spots in it, and yes. If you get to a video and it goes blank, that means that it's probably nothing after that anyway. I'll be over there in 1 second. I just want to kill the video before it gets worse.